So recently I've been kind of getting a little bit deeper into AI and like AI workflow. And it kind of sparked me recently, like all the AI stuff that's coming out, like the new browser that GPT came out with, right? Cursor has been out for a while, and then Cloud Code as well. I never really got into those tools. Like I slightly touched them. I tried to vibe code a couple projects, but nothing substantial. And on top of that, I was kind of traditional where I really wanted to just kind of understand the topics and you know like actually learn them right and not just kind of rely on AI too heavily. And I still stand by something. I still stand on that, but I've kind of realized so right now I'm a web developer for a company, and I realized that one of my CTO, he tasked me with something, and I got that task done. And don't get me wrong, the task that he initially gave me was a little bit more complicated than what he outputted, right? But essentially, I took like 2 or 3 days getting this task out that was pretty complicated in a sense. And then he's like, "Great, this is good for like long term, but I needed to get it still needed to get merged and reviewed and stuff like that." And so he's like, "You know what? I'm also going to." He kind of just vibe coded a solution like on the spot, like and was able to get an answer that he kind of wanted there, which brought me. It's just kind of it opened up my eyes to who's using AI and how fast you can actually be. Now, don't get me wrong, AI is definitely part of my workflow, but it was never a part in terms of like where AI is extensively writing code for me, and it was for him, and he is actually a data scientist, and he thinks it's the future. And we talked a little bit. I kind of He's a little bit of a mentor, so I talked to him about it, and I told him, what he thinks the future holds, and he really strongly believes if you're not using AI to like the max capacity within the next 2 years, like you're gonna be left behind to the point where you don't even want to try to recover, right? And that's definitely a hot take and something to think about. But then I realized like how good it's getting, right? And the crazy part is it's just going to get better. That's kind of what um I kind of came to the conclusion about it. And now these are not different. These are not the same, but an analogy he used is when he was in school, when he was in undergrad, um, Google was kind of starting to pop up a little bit more, right? And a lot of controversy came out with him not using Google, and just like they would tell him, don't use Google, just read books, right? And so that's what he was told. Don't use Google, you're not going to learn anything. Read books, right? Do it the traditional way. And now we're getting to an age where it's like, don't use AI, you're not going to learn, use Google, right? And so although those are different, of course, because AI legit writes code for you, but kind of so does Google, right? Back in the day when you had books, um, you couldn't just copy and paste. You had to physically write it down. And then when kind of like, something came out where you can start sharing code a bit easier, right? You were able to just copy and paste still, even if it wasn't given to you, or like actually if it wasn't just written by AI, at least you copied and pasted. But really, is copying and pasting any different from just writing it? It's like you did nothing, right? You might have read it a little bit more, right? And so I kind of came to the conclusion where I think to an extent, you know, AI writing code and having context of your code is a good thing. And this is tough because I never was this way. I always wanted to be able to come up with a solution that didn't involve the AI understanding my code base. So like I said, I'd never used Cursor, Claude Code, or anything like that. I recently hopped on on Cursor, and I'm telling you, it is like a game changer. Like how fast I move now, it's just like the autocomplete and being able to quickly just ask a question and it knows the context of my code. I think it's a powerful thing, and I can see why people say like you gotta use it, right? And before in the past, what I was kind of doing is I never gave it access to my code base, right? I would give it snippets and I would use like GPT or Claude, right? And I would give it snippets and say like, hey, here's my problem. This is what I'm trying to uncover. And I realized that it's just like, although that got me the answer, it took me so much longer and it hallucinated so much more because it just did not have context of what I was trying to do, right? Um, and on top of that, I started thinking, right? Okay, is he correct when he says AI will not take over, right? But will AI be the future? And in 2 years, like if you're not using it, you're good luck trying to make it type of thing. And I realized maybe he's onto something because I know the emergence of MCP and how much it's being adopted, the protocol, how much it's being adopted now. I mean, I can't even make this up. Like even AWS has an MCP. And imagine how crazy it could be to tap into infrastructure, something that I didn't even think was possible, right? That's my whole point of not using AI is I told them like it's not possible to tap into infrastructure, right? And so like there's no way AI is ever going to replace an engineer. And I still vouch for that. I still don't think it's going to replace engineers, but I definitely think they'll people will work faster and it'll be more will be expected, right? And now it's clear, right? It's very clear with like I said, AWS coming out with MCPs, Azure, like there's so many now infrastructures coming out with it, with MCPs being able to tap into that. I think that's so powerful, and I think that is the reason why um I I just think that that's the reason that kind of opened my eyes to realize that, oh crap, this thing is really not going anywhere, right? And so I might as well get good at it. Um, I'm also gonna make a video about AI browsers in general because I found like a good niche, like a good kind of work, not niche, sorry, like a good workflow on it, and I think it actually be very surprised on how I use it. Uh, with like job applications and stuff like that. Like it really improve your workflow and make things asynchronous, right? And so the biggest take that I want you to get out of this is don't like fully just like immerse yourself into vibe coding. As a matter of fact, I still don't use agents mode in Cursor anyways. And that's just because it's so foreign to me for AI to write code like in the brow in sorry, like in the editor itself. And so I'm really only using ask and plan. And I'm doing that in the context of my code base, which I think is now a big game changer. That's why I think it's a big game changer for me now, is because I'm using this autocomplete and asking, but in the context of it understanding my code base. One thing though, I was trying to ask, maybe some people in the comments can help me out with this, is I really wanted to understand how you would use it when you don't have a mono repo, right? And so think about it, right? If you have maybe like two APIs that need to talk to each other, let's say it's a bigger company, right? And you might have these split into different repos, or you might not like this mono repo architecture, right? And you want to have like a microservice type of architecture, right? So you have a bunch of different services. Um, and so my question is, how do you apply good context for two different APIs, right? Let's say two different APIs need to communicate in some sort of way. If you're not in a mono repo, so maybe these two cursor editors are open at once, right? And both of them have their own context, but you are setting up some sort of communication between them, right? With whatever kind of language you're using or that may be, and you kind of want to design the architecture across them properly. Now, this is not much of a problem for me, but this is definitely a problem if you're like fully trying to vibe code. But I don't do that, so I still can actually, prompt it correctly and try to come up with the right outcome here. But if you think about it, right, how would you do that? And one thing we were thinking was, me and some of my friends were thinking, well, maybe we could use something like Swagger, and maybe Swagger has some sort of MCP. Swagger is like documentation for API, right? And so you build it on one end, right? You build it using Cursor there, and it builds out some sort of maybe, API endpoint or something like that, and it builds out the documentation for that and provides an MCP for it, right? And then you hook on with that on the other side and it could read it and understand maybe what's coming over or anything, but that only really works with endpoints. Like what if like I don't know, I couldn't even think of something on the spot, but what if it was something more than just endpoints, right? Something that connected these in a different way that maybe Swagger, of course, doesn't work, or maybe you don't even have access to Swagger in this kind of project or programming language or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, that's something I thought like was still not solved there. But yeah, I think AI is going to be the future, and I think um, if you need to adopt it soon. I truly think that it's not. I'm not telling you that you should be vibe coding for sure, but I think you should be trying to adopt it, and make yourself faster. Uh, and if you're just starting off, I don't think that's probably not the best advice, because I feel like I definitely like I already have like almost 4 years of experience, which isn't a lot compared to other people. But I feel like I'm comfortable enough, right? And so I'm understanding, what the AI is producing. But if you're new, I s- I suggest maybe staying away from it and then slowly building your AI companion and kind of bringing them in as much as you can. But yeah, that's kind of maybe the advice that I would give. Start off like just trying to learn the basics and then move into, using AI. But if you are have some years of experience or just have some experience, then I strongly suggest you kind of hop on that and use it. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say.